Chapter 11 Phoenix Fairy Fire and Flower Claw Red, Dragon Fire Technique. The Great Elders December. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Relax, have a seat. Uchiha Setsuna said calmly, then pulled a shuriken from his ninja pouch and tossed it to Uchiha Ci. Ci caught it and examined it, but didn't see anything special. If anything, the Elder's shuriken was probably a high-end model, better quality and more durable than the kunai he used for blocking. Great Elder, what's this about? Uchiha Ci was confused. Who taught you to throw shuriken like that? Uchiha asked, eyes half closed. Uchiha was immediately shocked. He'd only briefly attacked Saikairo, and hadn't even used his signature shuriken technique. Yet, Uchiha had instantly picked up on something different in his shuriken style, but Uchiha Ci didn't know how to answer. After all, he'd learned the skill from Setsuna Uchiha himself. He couldn't very well say he'd been admiring it for years and had a moment of enlightenment watching the elder throw it. That was just garbage talk. Even high-level guys like Uchiha Shursui couldn't figure it out, let alone learn such a high-end shuriken throwing technique. After a long pause, Uchiha Ci could only say, Great Elder, I'm just a genin. Aside from the clan's standard ninja training, I have no other way to learn ninjutsu. I just practice as much as I can. Oh. A glint flashed in Uchiha's eyes, which had been half closed. So, this kid's a hidden genius. No wonder Shursui was so interested. Is that so? Uchiha paused, nodded, and pulled another shuriken from his pouch. He held the shuriken in one hand and made a yin seal with the other. Then, something magical happened. The shuriken in the elder's hand was engulfed in flames, floating in the air and spinning rapidly. The Phoenix Immortal Fire and the Phoenix Immortal Fire Claw Red are related. The seals don't change. The technique is simple. Just wrap the ninja tool in chakra, form a yin seal to change the nature of the chakra, and throw it. Uchiha said calmly. Uchiha Ci was stunned, his expression turning strange. Is the Great Elder giving me pointers? Hosenka, Phoenix Fire, is an advanced version of Hosenka, a B-rank ninjutsu. Instead of shooting fireballs, it wraps a rotating shuriken in flames. This increases the sharpness, and the wind from the shuriken's rotation also enhances the fire's power. Alright, you try it. Uchiha withdrew his chakra and ordered. He didn't bother to pick it up, letting the hot shuriken fall to the ground. Uchiha Ci was slightly disappointed, his eyes wide. He'd thought the Great Elder would show him some real skills. Even someone at Setsuna Uchiha's level was still just a man. Uchiha Ci had no choice but to obey. He placed the shuriken in front of him and made the yin seal. He tried to grab the shuriken with his chakra. The shuriken flickered with flames, then sputtered on the ground and stopped moving. Uchiha Ci looked embarrassed. Uchiha Setsuna, watching from the side, narrowed his eyes slightly, nodded calmly, and said, That's it. Remember this simple form change for fire release. You can use fire release in many ways, such as. The elder threw another shuriken, sticking it into a tree trunk. This time, the shuriken was tied with wire. The elder casually made 4 seals, which Uchiha Ci recognized as the Dragon Fire Technique seals. Sichin Maoin. A line of fire raced along the wire. This is the Dragon Fire Technique. Practice with this. Once you've mastered it, practice with the Phoenix Fire Claw Red. When you've gotten this far, come back to me. Uchiha Setsuna ordered calmly, then threw a shuriken with a steel wire attached. This time, he just made a yin seal. Dragon fire erupted. He'd simplified the sealing process into a single seal. Uchiha Ci was amazed. Someone in the Uchiha clan could do that? Using a single seal to release fire was like Hashirama Senju's would release. Once you've mastered this, you'll understand the nature of fire release, and from there. Uchiha frowned, looked into Uchiha Ci's eyes, and shook his head. Forget it. Let's focus on surviving first, then we'll worry about the rest. In just 2 minutes, Setsuna Uchiha, an old-timer from the Warring States period, had taught Uchiha Ci about fire release's form and nature changes. He really dares to teach this. A normal ninja wouldn't understand Uchiha Setsuna's teaching method, but Uchiha Ci had mastered Uchiha-style shuriken techniques, and had achieved a level of proficiency in fire release. Now he looked at it all from a high-level perspective. The Phoenix Fire and Dragon Fire technique were just specialized applications. With his mastery, Uchiha Sei tried to recreate them in his mind. He then realized that he had a headache. He actually understood it. You have mastered the art of fire release, Dragon Fire technique, entry, C. You have mastered fire release, Phoenix Fire Claw red, entry, B. 2 subtitles appeared before him, and Uchiha was stunned. He looked at Setsuna Uchiha with resentment. Stop teaching. I need to grow a brain. If this continued, he'd master every technique before they even reached the battlefield. Is this true? At that moment, Uchiha Saikairo returned with a solemn look after setting up warning traps. Great Elder, there's a team of rain ninjas nearby searching the area. Maybe we should retreat for now. But, when Saikairo saw Setsuna Uchiha teaching Uchiha Sei ninjutsu, he was stunned, his eyes turning red. He knew it. No wonder Uchiha Setsuna had chosen Uchiha Sei for the mission. The guy was a Hawk faction kid. And he'd fooled Master Shursui into thinking he was a dove. This is unreasonable. What did you say? Uchiha frowned slightly and asked again. Uchiha Saikairo suppressed his anger and reported, there's a team of rain ninja ahead, seemingly patrolling with a purpose. He suggested, the ninja code says to avoid complications outside of missions. Besides, Great Elder, given the chaos in the land of rain, it's best to avoid contact. Uchiha frowned. He'd heard Obito talk about this. Minato Namikaze advised his students to be cautious about certain people in the land of rain, to avoid contact with outside ninjas whenever possible. The rain ninja might not be serving Amigakure, Hidden Rain Village. Of course, there was nothing to fear from Uchiha Sei. He also wanted to contact strange ninjas, but he had no excuse to convince the team to take the risk. After hearing the news, Uchiha's eyes suddenly opened, the 3-tomo Sharingan slowly spinning. He kicked away the bonfire, drew a long sword, and ordered, prepare for battle. Saikairo, lead the way. We'll deal with the rain ninja team you found. Then, move quickly and cross the border into Kusagakure, grass country, tonight. Chapter 12 Bad News, the second-tailed Jinchuuriki. The Madman Walks at Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The 3-water symbol on Tang Ninja's headbands looked like a stylized Chuan character. After learning Yunin was scouting ahead, Uchiha quickly moved to intercept them. The skills of ninja from major countries were far superior to those from smaller ones. Spotting the Yunin headband, Uchiha Setsuna launched a devastating 3-hit combo before they could even draw their shuriken. The Great Elder Uchiha leapt into action. Uchiha Sei watched him draw his long sword, its blade wreathed in crimson flames, and then descend, like wildfire sweeping across a prairie. He cut down the 3 Tang ninja before they could even cry out. Uchiha Sei felt like he was being schooled by a max-level boss. After dispatching the cannon fodder, Uchiha held his blade to the throat of a Yunin, demanding coldly. Who sent you? The Yunin cowered, refusing to speak. Uchiha simply activated his Sharingan, staring him down with an icy glare. After a moment, he deactivated his Sharingan and killed the Yunin with a single stroke. Standing nearby, Uchiha Sei saw the Great Elder's expression suddenly change. The Great Elder whirled around and barked. Move out, cross the border tonight. Once you're across, don't stop, head straight for Yuno country's capital and rendezvous with Commander Fugaku. If you're intercepted, don't engage, just run. Great Elder, what's happening? Uchiha Saikairo swallowed nervously. Sensing the urgency, Uchiha Setsuna cut to the chase. The 2-tailed Jinchuuriki has appeared in Yuno country. Their target is likely our clan's garrison in Hell Valley, and there are probably interceptors ahead. This has escalated. We need to get to Yuyan City, the capital, immediately, contact our liaison, and get this news back to Uchiha. What? Uchiha Saikairo's face paled, horrified. Kumogakure was using its Jinchuuriki as a weapon of war. If the Jinchuuriki reached Hell Valley, undefended by elite shinobi, it would be a massacre. On the eve of the Third Ninja War, was Kumogakure already unleashing such devastating power on small countries? Uchiha Sei's eyes gleamed. The 2-tailed Jinchuuriki. all the fancy shuriken skills in the world wouldn't help against that kind of power. He recalled his brief sparring session with Uchiha Saikairo. Mastering shuriken jutsu to an insane degree gave even a genin like Uchiha Ci a fighting chance against a Sharingan-wielding chunin. In other words, Uchiha Ci, as a genin, already possessed chunin-level strength. If shuriken skills counted as specialties, Uchiha Ci might even be considered a special jonin. Ordinary missions no longer cut it, he needed more dangerous missions, stronger opponents. That was the only way he could earn real recognition, and now, on the battlefield, hearing about the two-tailed Jinchuuriki filled Uchiha with pure elation. He nearly wept. Uchiha surveyed his two subordinates, preparing to offer some encouragement. Saikairo, the spineless coward, was a picture of fear, looking like he wanted to disappear completely, but Uchiha Setsuna understood. Enemies of that caliber turned this into an S-rank mission. Fear was natural, but when Uchiha Setsuna looked at Uchiha Ci, his eye twitched. What was wrong with this kid? His eyes were wide with anticipation, tears welled at the corners of his mouth, and he was practically buzzing with excitement. He kept muttering, "Let's go. Let's go. Let's go," that he practically had "I want to fight." Tattooed on his forehead, Uchiha's eyebrow shot up. What the hell? This kid was scaring him. Uchiha instantly swallowed the pep talk he was about to give. With a stern face and cold eyes, he drew his sword and pointed it into the darkness. "Move out," that they vanished into the night. Under the starless sky, the mountains crouched like slumbering beasts, silent and ominous. Thanks to Uchiha Setsuna's swift action against the Yunin patrols, the Uchiha team crossed the Yuno country border undetected. Meanwhile, the night slipped away. A break in the clouds revealed the full moon, bathing the valley in its pale light. Kumogakure Jonin Lamy, asleep with his hand on his ninja sword, snapped awake. He frowned. Something's wrong. It's too quiet. He nudged his teammate, Moloi, on watch duty. "Moloi, has the Tang ninja contact reported in?" Moloi, wiping his sword, frowned slightly. "No. It's been over half an hour." Lamy pondered, then barked. "Send a message to our contacts in the border villages, find out what's happening." Moloi was about to use his summoning jutsu when he looked up. A carrier pigeon descended in the moonlight. He caught it, retrieving the message from its leg. "Lamy-sama, news has arrived. The Uchiha have entered Yuno country. They changed course. Instead of heading for Hell Valley, they're heading for Yuyen City." Lamy was jolted, waking Tutai. "Trouble. We need to move. Uchiha Setsuna may already know our plan." Back with Team Uchiha, the team had crossed the Yuno country border, passing 3 villages without stopping. With the moon setting, and the eastern sky beginning to brighten, the sounds of monkeys echoed through the valleys. They had been on the move since 8 o'clock the previous morning, pushing through the night without rest. Exhaustion had set in. Uchiha Ci, despite his newly acquired skills, was hampered by his limited chakra. He was panting, holding his legs, utterly drained. An abandoned village presented a chance to rest. Uchiha Saikairo protested, claiming he couldn't go any further. Uchiha Setsuna reluctantly agreed to a brief respite. He ordered Saikairo to clear a perimeter, then strung wire around the village, attaching explosive tags and bells. Uchiha Ci, despite his fatigue, tried to help. The Great Elder silenced him with a chop to the back of the head. Uchiha then summoned a ninja crow for early warning, and solemnly told Saikairo. "Tangyen City is half a day away. We'll rest for 2 hours, then move out." He closed his eyes and was snoring almost instantly. Uchiha Saikairo collapsed, asleep as well. Little did they know, danger was closing in. Next chapter, Rumble. The battle begins. Please collect, read, and recommend, please, this is really important to new and young authors. Chapter 13 Roar, Fight to the Death. Dedicate yourself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boom. It felt like a giant had stomped on the building, the ground shaking violently. Uchiha Ci snapped awake to the sight of the two-tailed beast tearing through the unfamiliar camp. Screams, roars, the zip of kunai whizzing past, deafening explosions of detonating tags, all of it fueled the chaos. The monstrous beast threw back its head and roared, blue-black chakra gathering around its mouth. Then, boom. A tailed beast bomb shot out, aimed straight at Uchiha CI. Faced with this terrifying jutsu, C's heart pounded. His mind went blank, his pupils dilated, and a primal fear of immense power surged within him. But then, talent, combat intuition, activated. C's vision blurred, and his body moved on its own. Yunin's here. Wake up, Uchiha Setsuna's voice boomed in his ears, followed by the whoosh of debris propelled by the explosion. The sound of bells rang out, Uchiha CI shook his head, dust cascading from his forehead, he opened his eyes, jolted awake. He found himself wedged between a section of crumbling wall and a broken beam. Ahead, Setsuna Uchiha faced 3 Kumogakure ninja, all wearing the Cloud Village flak jackets and breathing hard. Beside him, Uchiha Saikairo gripped a kunai, his entire body, hands, feet, even his teeth, trembled. His Sharingan blazed with fear. Why am I, a chunin, facing enemies like this? He cried, his voice cracking. Finally caught you, Uchiha rats. Lamy, the elder of the Yunin trio, sneered and began weaving hand seals, ox. A ball of lightning crackled in his hand, ready to strike. This was lightning release, thunderous might, a ninjutsu similar to Raikiri. It concentrated lightning chakra in the hand, but unlike Raikiri, it didn't burn through the user's cells. Instead, it unleashed a localized burst of lightning, a small-scale killing technique. Setsuna Uchiha's face was grim, illuminated by the blue glow of the lightning. These guys were tough, especially the one-eyed ninja with the black hat in the center, Dodai, a right-hand man to the third Raikage. He wielded the terrifying lava-release Kekiai Genkai, and his strength approached Kage level. He was nearly equal to Uchiha Setsuna, combined with Lamy's support and Malloy blocking their escape. This team was here to eliminate him. Realizing this, Setsuna narrowed his eyes, already making a decision. He turned to his 2 subordinates and ordered coldly. Saikairo. Go. It's up to you to complete the mission. I'll buy you the time. Hearing Setsuna's words, Lamy, leader of the Kumogakure team, smirked. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said to Malloy beside him. Go take out those 2. Setsuna Uchiha probably obtained key intel. We can't let them escape. Inform the Uchiha. Malloy frowned slightly. Lamy-senpai, if I leave, I can't guarantee I can contain Setsuna Uchiha's retreat. Then be quick. Eliminate them, then immediately return and reinforce the barrier. Lamy's eyes blazed with murderous intent. Setsuna Uchiha has to die today. Otherwise, with his eye power, he could disrupt the Two Tails rampage in Hell Valley, ruining our entire plan. Hearing this, Malloy took a deep breath and nodded. He moved quickly, bypassing Setsuna and charging towards CI and Saikairo. Seeing this, Setsuna moved to intercept him. However, 2 figures blocked his path. Dodai grinned coldly. Old man, in a straight-up fight, maybe I couldn't beat you, but the 2 of us can distract you, no problem. Setsuna gritted his teeth, his face a mask. Is that so? These kids talk a big game these days. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Uchiha CI yanked a kunai from his pouch, scrambled over the broken beams, and crawled out from under the rubble. After hearing Setsuna's order, he pieced together the information and quickly analyzed the situation. First, the Yunin attack was planned. Their goal, unleash the two-tailed Jinchuuriki in Hell Valley and destroy the Uchiha garrison to free the Blood Pond clan. To do this, Setsuna Uchiha, with his powerful eyes, was their primary target. Second, the current situation. These 3 jounin were dispatched to ensure Setsuna's death. Judging by the team's skill, it took 3 to deal with Setsuna, but now, 1 had broken off, aiming to kill him and Saikairo to prevent the intel from reaching the Uchiha. It was dangerous, but an opportunity. Uchiha CI grinned, dusted himself off, and strode forward. In the original timeline, Shursui, with his body flicker technique, would have escaped, and the weak-willed Saikairo would have been the catalyst for him unlocking the Mangekyo Sharingan. If CI died here, he would be worse than useless. At the very least, the information had to get back. After all, Tiandao Company had standards. As a strong man from another world, he couldn't perform worse than in the original timeline. Uchiha CI walked to meet Malloy's charge, his gaze hardening. he turned slightly to Saikairo and said calmly. Saikairo-senpai, retreat. I'll cover you. What? Saikairo's eyes widened in disbelief. Are you crazy? I've seen that guy in the files. He's a special jounin, a master of swordsmanship and sealing techniques. You don't stand a chance. Uchiha CI shook his head, glanced at him, and said matter-of-factly. Saikairo-senpai, if nobody covers us, we'll both die here, and the information won't get back to the clan. Besides, if you die, someone will likely take your Sharingan, further weakening the clan's bloodline. So, logically, it makes more sense for me to cover the retreat. You. Saikairo looked stricken, staring at CI in horror. He couldn't understand how anyone could be so casual about life and death, and willing to sacrifice himself for him. Against a jounin. Words almost failed Saikairo. He nodded sharply, but then, his face paled, and he turned back to CI, saying. But CI, I don't know how to contact the Nikomata clan. CI almost vomited blood. That is a problem. CI hesitated for a moment, then pulled a parchment scroll from his waist pouch and shoved it into Saikairo's hand. Here, take this. It's a one-time summoning contract. Once you use it, ask the summoner. Looking at the contract scroll, Saikairo was completely moved. The Nikomata clan summoning contract was something many coveted. On the battlefield, it could save lives. But CI was handing it over so easily. Saikairo had never met such a generous person. It was like he was entrusting him with his last will. But before Saikairo could thank him, Uchiha's expression changed, and he shoved him away. A barrier erupted between them. Malloy slammed his hands on the ground, completing a barrier ninjutsu, death prison, trapping him and CI inside. Only the living could leave. If Uchiha hadn't pushed him, they would have been locked inside together. Saikairo suddenly felt like the world had gone silent. Through the transparent barrier, he saw CI silently mouth the words. Go. Saikairo's pupils shrank, and tears streamed down his face. At that moment, all the past grievances between them vanished. In Saikairo's heart, there was only the image of Uchiha CI, so noble he seemed to radiate light. He wholeheartedly acknowledged Uchiha CI. He didn't bother wiping his tears. He scrambled away, clutching the summoning contract tightly. Uchiha CI, wait for me. I'll find someone to save you, I promise. Chapter 14 Fierce Battle. God-level silk manipulation, Dragon Fire Prison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In ruins, the battlefield was split in two, with a circular barrier reaching skyward, trapping Uchiha inside. Hey, one actually got away. Malloy's cold gaze fixed on Uchiha CI, a nasty smirk twisting his lips. Doesn't matter. I'll make this quick. Uchiha CI eyed the ninja across from him, the red windbreaker, the yellow hair, the beard, and his gaze narrowed. He recognized this guy, from the 4th Ninja War. This was the dude who set up 36 barrier regenerations on Turtle Island to keep Naruto and Killer Bee from reaching the battlefield. The barriers were tough. It took Naruto and Bee working together to break through. He was the leader of the Cloud Village Barrier Squad back then, a ninja who specialized in powerful sealing techniques, but that was then. Now, he was just a special jounin. Uchiha felt a twinge of anxiety as they faced off. Did ninjas who focused on sealing techniques actually have any offensive power? Regardless, he was still a special jounin. He probably outclassed him in taijutsu. Saikairo also mentioned he was skilled with a blade. He could probably kill him, right? Kid, what's with that look? Malloy casually drew the long sword from his back, extending his hand and saying coldly. You're seriously unlucky. A useless genin who hasn't even awakened his Sharingan, and you run into a master like me right out of the gate. Malloy's tone was relaxed, like he'd already won. One strike. That's all it'll take. Your enemy, Malloy, is taunting you. Hearing this, Uchiha ignored the subtitles in front of him, grinned, and nodded enthusiastically. That's right, Cloud Village bro. I like your style. Don't hold back. Remember, even a lion goes all out against a rabbit. Best to use everything you've got right off the bat, so I don't have any chance to counter. Uchiha Ci lowered his voice, adding a somber warning. Just remember. Never, ever, let this turn into a drawn-out fight. Alright. Kid, you've pissed me off. Malloy frowned, a surge of anger hitting him. Was this kid looking down on him? Implied he had stamina issues? Couldn't handle a long fight? Still, Malloy didn't take Uchiha's words too seriously. As a barrier ninja, his perception skills were limited. As far as he could tell, Uchiha Ci only had genin-level chakra. This had to be a ploy. The kid was trying to buy time for his teammate, just trying to make him hesitate. Malloy smirked, looking at Uchiha Ci with disdain. He shifted his stance, tucking the sword under his arm, forming the body flicker technique seal. In a flash, he vanished. Reappearing above Uchiha Ci's head, gripping the sword with both hands, he swung it in a horizontal arc from his shoulders, aiming to decapitate Uchiha Ci. Malloy stared down, thinking, I'm a special jonin. Killing a little genin like this is a piece of cake. The blade whistled through the air, sharp and cold, close enough to split hairs. Uchiha Ci felt his scalp prickle, the hairs on his neck stood on end. In that split second, a jolt of adrenaline coursed through Uchiha Ci, overriding his fear and snapping him back into control. He ducked, dodging the blade, his eyes like lightning, his fingers already reaching for his ninja pouch. Swish. 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 *3 dark shapes shot upwards, forcing Malloy to leap back. Clang. 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 As Malloy deflected the kunai, Uchiha Ci widened the distance between them. Estimating the space between them, Uchiha Ci's heart sank. He glared at Malloy, wanting to curse. I told you, use everything you've got right away. What the hell are you doing as a barrier ninja? Why won't you listen to my advice? Malloy gritted his teeth, rage boiling over. He charged forward, aiming a strike at Uchiha Ci's vitals. Act crazy. Die. Seeing the attack, Uchiha narrowed his eyes and flung 8 shuriken, arcing them to cover every possible angle. Malloy flinched, halting abruptly, letting the shuriken pass harmlessly in front of him. Before he could resume his attack, his vision went dark. Uchiha Ci had drawn a scroll, unfurling it with a flick of his wrist. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of kunai exploded from the scroll, making Malloy want to scream. What kind of genin was this? Buying ninja tools by the ton? Under the barrage of steel, Malloy could only block with his sword. Soon, kunai were sticking out of the ground all around him. Malloy was breathing hard. Chasing down the Uchiha squad at full speed had drained his energy. Now he was stuck fighting this hedgehog, who was so skilled with shuriken he hardly seemed like a genin. Just when he thought he could finally catch his breath, close the distance, and finish the kid, Uchiha moved his fingers in a subtle motion. The ends of the kunai scattered around suddenly lit up. As the light intensified, the walls, floors, and dead branches of the surrounding ruins crumbled. Dust billowed, and Malloy felt a stinging sensation on his cheek. Nearly invisible threads, shimmering with hints of blood, stretched outwards from the collapsing ruins. Malloy touched his cheek, his open palm now slick with red blood. He frowned, tracing the lines with his eyes. The dense threads, now visible, were interwoven into a web, trapping Malloy. A forest of silk, sharp as razors. Malloy slashed with his sword, but the blades became entangled, the web-like structure simply bouncing back. What the hell is this? Malloy stared at Uchiha Ci, horror creeping onto his face. How is this possible? So many ninja threads, woven into a structure like this. How did this kid manage that so quickly? Uchiha shook his head. Especially when a jonin fights a genin, if you get a loss, you can lose even if you ride a flying dragon on his face. No wonder people say Kumogakure is a barbarian. His eyes, once filled with anticipation, now held only cold indifference. Pay the price for your arrogance. Uchiha slowly formed 4 hand seals: tiger, hare, dragon, ox. Fire style, dragon flame release. He took a breath, gazing at Malloy trapped like a lamb in the net. He extended his index finger, unleashing a torrent of dragon fire. The raging flames spread along the thread, engulfing the terrified Malloy. Then, Uchiha kept going. He formed another set of hand seals, rat tiger dog ox hair tiger. Fire style, Phoenix Sage fire technique. He wasn't done yet. After completing the seals, Uchiha drew 8 more shuriken from his ninja pouch, combining them with the spewing phoenix fire. He launched them at Malloy. The wind fueled the flames, the shuriken slicing through the air with a piercing shriek. Fire style, Phoenix Sage fire nail crimson. Finally, Uchiha pulled the thread. The web of ninja wire tightened, crushing Malloy towards the center. Now, dragon fire was his prison, the phoenix's cry his death knell. Uchiha Ci stared at the inferno, offering a curt farewell. Sayonara. Goodbye, Eternal Sasuke Secret Picture Sound Effect. Avi. Chapter 15 Sealing Fire, Sealing Magic, and Killing with Lightning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A pile of shattered bones and ash. That's it. Uchiha Ci wiped the sweat off his brow and exhaled, watching the dragon fire prison burn. He was pushing his limits, mentally and physically, after fighting this hard. He hadn't rested since yesterday, barely reacting after being jolted awake by the exploding tags. The 1C1B combo, combining ninjutsu with Uchiha-style shuriken techniques, had nearly drained him. He eyed the black smoke rising from the burning prison, a nagging feeling hitting him. Despite the battle, he hadn't felt the kind of pressure he expected. Malloy, a special Jonin-level sealing ninja, hadn't shown his true skills. Plus, fire release was known for being, well, relatively gentle. This guy wasn't just going to roast him alive, was he? Uchiha Ci's sudden surge of power had caught the 3 behind him off guard, especially Great Elder Setsuna Uchiha. Truth be told, Setsuna's heart had leaped into his throat when he saw Ci push past Saikairo and charge in alone. Ci's shuriken skills might have had a touch of youthful flair, but he was facing a Jonin. When Ci got trapped in Kumogakure's barrier, Setsuna had thought he was a goner. Ci was no match for a Kumogakure Jonin, or so he thought. Then, in a flash, the tables turned. Amateurs watch the spectacle, pros understand the game. Ci's quick thinking and impressive Uchiha-style shuriken jutsu transformed the 2 weak sea-level ninjutsu, dragon fire and phoenix fire, into something else entirely, a true sublimation of ninjutsu. Dragon fire technique and phoenix immortal fire technique, both sea-level fire release techniques, had obvious flaws. They focused on wide area and suppression, but lacked concentrated power. Ci had used ninja wire to guide the dragon fire and upgraded the phoenix fire with shuriken, concentrating the scattered fireballs into a blazing claw, combining the power of the 2 sea-level techniques into one devastating attack. It packed the punch of an A-level ninjutsu. Add to that the amazing sharpness of the straightened ninja wire, it was a total game changer. It was like deflecting dozens of ninja swords all at once. Setsuna was blown away by the combined ninjutsu, even trying to replicate it himself. Piece of cake. He thought. This kid's fighting talent was insane. He'd teach him a move, and Ci would use it flawlessly the next second. Like a duck to water. Malloy. Tutai, one of the 3 Yunin ninjas, shouted, looking horrified. Who would have imagined that Ci could pull off such a series of maneuvers, defeating a superior opponent using inferior techniques? Damn it! That kid actually got to Malloy. Tutai's face was as dark as coal, veins bulging on his forehead. He could barely stop himself from charging in and blasting Ci into oblivion with a molten rock fist. He knew that losing Malloy meant that he and Lamy, though able to keep Setsuna Uchiha busy, would never be able to finish him off. The mission would probably end right there. Calm down. Lamy, older than Setsuna Uchiha, grabbed Tutai's shoulders, her voice steady. Tutai, don't be rash. Let's finish what we started. Malloy isn't as weak as you think. Look. The barrier's still up. Malloy's alive. Not even as she said it, Lamy's brow furrowed. Ci's attack had been so swift and relentless, it had caught everyone off guard. Especially Malloy, a barrier specialist whose skills mainly lay in sealing techniques. Even for a veteran jonin like her, it would have been tough to weave seals in time to react to such a rapid-fire assault. All you could do was take the hit. Her unease was growing, the three slowed their attacks, eyes glued to the battle unfolding within the barrier. It was just a genin fight, but it had unexpectedly shifted the entire battlefield and even threatened Yunin's strategic plans in the land of Tang. Inside the barrier, black smoke swirled and flames roared. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of razor-sharp ninja wires, controlled by CI, slashed towards the center. It looked like a total rout. CI, a genin who hadn't even activated his Sharingan, was single-handedly overwhelming Malloy, the special jonin of Kumogakure village. But then, C's expression changed. Something was off. The wire cutting toward the heart of the inferno should have shredded Malloy like pulled pork. Instead, it was encountering resistance, like an elastic band stretched taut over a yarn ball. The wrapping grew tighter and thicker, but it couldn't break through. Suddenly, the firestorm began to churn. A bone-chilling voice echoed out. "Kid, you think you've won?" As the words faded, a pattern resembling a summoning seal expanded from the center of the blaze. C's pupils constricted as he recognized it. He yanked back his hand, releasing the wire, and threw 8 more shuriken into the heart of the flames. "Useless." Malloy's cold voice replied. His figure began to emerge from the flames. Emerge wasn't quite the right word. In C's vision, the fire began to recede, like the water draining from a toilet bowl, swirling clockwise towards Malloy's position. Malloy half-knelt, slamming one hand onto a scroll on the ground, his eyes icy. Sealing fire seal. In an instant, the entire inferno was sucked into that small scroll. The shuriken CI had thrown hurtled toward him. Malloy remained calm, forming the rat seal and pressing his hands together in the air. A sphere-like magic circle appeared. Sealing magic circle. This was the technique that had blocked C's ninja wire. Malloy stood, approaching CI step by step, his hands weaving complex seals. CI felt a chill run down his spine and instinctively tried to flee, but Malloy opened his arms wide, bellowing, "Boy, where do you think you're going?" He slammed a seal into the ground. Thunder-killing binding. A surge of electricity raced toward CI, forming a ring-like pattern around his feet. The kanji for thunder blazed to life. Suddenly, 4 whips of electricity lashed out, binding his limbs tight. Electric currents coursed through his body, paralyzing him. He couldn't move. Half of his body was numb, and even speaking was difficult. "Huh, kid, what do you have to say now?" Malloy sneered. CI looked up at the sky, 1,000 unspoken words swirling in his head. The ancients were right. Fire release was a compassionate ninjutsu. All sizzle, no steak. Malloy slowly approached, drew his long knife, and playfully lifted C's chin, a sneer twisting his lips. "You Uchiha are all about flashy tricks. Too bad you ran into me." Malloy placed the blade across C's throat, his voice flat. "That's the end of your fireworks." Confronted by the overwhelming power of Malloy, C's face began to contort. He wanted to laugh maniacally, but he didn't dare to celebrate prematurely, so he held it back. The more he suppressed it, the more twisted his expression became. C's eyes narrowed, revealing a hint of mockery, a touch of disdain, and the calm composure of an old man. He raised the corners of his mouth, met Malloy's gaze, and couldn't help but smile. He said softly, "Oh really?" Chapter 16 Big Reversal. Ancestral Laughter. Uchiha's moment of realization. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The ninja battle had left the village in ruins. Shurikens littered the ground, tangled with silk threads, dirt clods, broken branches, and shattered bricks, all victims of shinobi techniques. Uchiha C's voice, barely a whisper, drifted through the air. Malloy visibly shuddered, as if reliving a trauma. Despite his ferocious attacks, he looked pathetic. His red trench coat was shredded by ninja tool threads, exposing smooth cuts and bleeding wounds. He hissed, the pain sharp and immediate. If he hadn't carried a seal scroll, one he could use without hand signs, he would have been in far worse shape under Uchiha C's onslaught of combined ninjutsu. Luckily, the scroll contained a sealing circle technique, otherwise, he might have actually suffered at the hands of this rookie genin. Malloy narrowed his eyes, cautious. He performed a hand seal and used his sensory ninjutsu to scan Uchiha Ci from head to toe. He sighed in relief, grasping his long knife, he approached, a sneer twisting his lips. "Still trying to trick me, kid?" he said coldly. "I can see it. You're practically out of chakra, your strength's gone, and you took a direct hit from my thunderbolt. You're too weak to even pull off a substitution jutsu." Malloy's mouth curved upward, smugly confident. "You're done," he said calmly. "All that's left for you is to wait for death." But Uchiha C's eyes remained unnervingly calm. He was in bad shape, just as Malloy said. He couldn't even manage a simple E-rank escape technique, but then, a look of relief washed over Uchiha C's face. He murmured, almost to himself, "I've finally. What are you babbling about, kid?" Malloy frowned, never taking his eyes off Uchiha Ci. After their fight, even with victory in sight, he couldn't afford to underestimate him. Uchiha Ci simply stared back, a grin spreading across his face. He spoke as if telling a story. "You know what? I've been waiting for this moment for so long. And now." His eyes gleamed with something bordering on mania. The grin widened. "I'm finally here." "What are you talking about? It makes no sense." Seeing Uchiha Ci still spouting nonsense at this point, Malloy scowled. "Whatever last wish you have, it ends now. Go to hell." He decided to end the conversation. He would stab Uchiha through the heart, ending his life. Malloy hefted the long knife, gripped the handle with both hands, stepped back, and positioned the hilt against his waist. The blade pointed directly at Uchiha C's heart. He just needed to thrust forward with all his strength, and the kid wouldn't utter another word. His eyes burning with ferocity, he lunged forward, driving the knife ahead. He could almost see Uchiha Ci falling, but at that precise moment, Uchiha Ci, still paralyzed by the lightning, suddenly threw back his head and roared with laughter. "Ho ho ho, ha 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 ha." That his laughter rose in stages, starting as a mocking chuckle, growing into a full-blown roar, until he was practically choking on it, tears streaming down his face. Uchiha Ci looked down at Malloy, his gaze contemptuous. "Cloud Ninja," he said, "you think you've won?" As Uchiha spoke, Malloy's long knife sliced through the high-collared black robe over Uchiha C's chest. When he saw what lay beneath, his eyes widened in disbelief, and his smug grin vanished. His hand froze, the knife still mid-thrust. This. Malloy looked up at Uchiha Ci in horror. "What is this? What is it?" Uchiha laughed, his voice bordering on hysteria. "Let me show you what it is." Ignoring the intense pain of the electricity coursing through him, Uchiha C's expression hardened. With one hand, he grabbed the collar of his robe and ripped it open. The black robe tore away, revealing a muscular young torso. But on that torso, he wore a vest crafted entirely from explosive tags. Dark lines of detonating seals crisscrossed his body, head to toe, every inch covered. The densely packed character explosion created a terrifying visual impact. Enough to level the entire village. Malloy felt a chilling numbness spread from his toes to his scalp, his entire body trembling. Uchiha Ci, this brat was wearing explosive tags like clothes. Damn him. He's insane. Completely insane. Wasn't he afraid of accidentally brushing against something and blowing himself to kingdom come? Uchiha Ci felt a sudden wave of relief. The ground seal with the word thunder on it faltered as Malloy's shock interrupted the chakra flow. Uchiha flexed his arms, jumped down, glanced at Malloy with indifference, and said calmly. "The one who really won is me." As soon as he finished speaking, Uchiha grabbed the explosive tags on his chest, one tug, and the whole village would go up in smoke with him. God. The battlefield fell silent. Outside the barrier, three figures were intently watching the fight unfold. As Malloy unleashed the fire sealing seal, the sealing array, and the lightning binding in rapid succession, the momentum shifted dramatically. The predator became the prey. Uchiha CI was now restrained, he was about to be killed with a knife. Damn it! Great Elder Uchiha was momentarily stunned, and immediately tried to break the barrier with a powerful ninjutsu. Uchiha CI, at this point, held a completely different weight in Great Elder Uchiha Setsuna's mind. He had mastered the Uchiha style and silk shuriken jutsu beyond his age, and with a little guidance could master the dragon fire technique and the phoenix sage fire technique, and he could combine techniques, creating combined ninjutsu that even amazed him. Uchiha CI was no longer the useless kid who couldn't even awaken the Sharingan. He was a genius among geniuses. As a high-ranking member of the clan, Uchiha Setsuna knew how to awaken the Sharingan. He could design a high-stress scenario to trigger the awakening in his clan members, but this kind of approach encouraged dependence, and forcing the Sharingan to awaken in someone without the necessary talent would only turn it into a burden, something others would covet and try to steal, but Uchiha CI was different. His talent was strong enough to support that power. Just moments ago, Uchiha Setsuna had been formulating a life-or-death plan, a bloody trial that would awaken Uchiha C's Mangekyo Sharingan, turning him into the ultimate weapon, but now, the tables had turned. This genius, who had only just begun to shine, was about to die in a foreign land. For Uchiha and his supporters, this was a devastating loss. Uchiha gritted his teeth. He would use Izanagi, he would sacrifice one of the two cloud ninja blocking his path, then force his way through the barrier and save Uchiha CI. This kind of talent couldn't die here. Chapter 17 The Great Elder is moved. Cry Uchiha doesn't need your sacrifice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Outside the perimeter, the two cloud ninja flanked Uchiha Setsuna, cutting off his escape. Seeing Malloy gaining the upper hand, they exchanged a look and nodded. Lamy harassed from behind with a mix of lightning and earth release jutsu. In front, Tutai used his Zunia thunder plow hot knife combined with molten release lava fist to constantly pressure Setsuna. Setsuna was trying to create an opening to trap one of them in a genjutsu, then use his Izanagi to swap himself out, but the cloud ninja kept switching opponents, never giving him a chance. Every second counted. It was clear they were buying time until Malloy finished off Uchiha CI and returned. This relentless assault was exhausting Setsuna, denying him any advantage. His face grew grim, etched with worry. If this kept up, not only would he fail to save Uchiha CI, but he'd likely be killed by the three of them. The situation was dire, but then, everything changed. Hoo hoo hoo, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha. A series of wild, unhinged laughs echoed from inside the barrier. Malloy's face contorted in terror as he reshaped the barrier with hand seals, allowing sounds to pass through freely. Lamy, Tutai. Fall back. Now. Malloy's horrified shout was punctuated by more maniacal laughter. What? Lamy froze, turning to look inside the barrier, and what he saw, Uchiha CI, shirtless, his body covered in a dense web of explosive tags. He clutched one to his chest, a sneer of defiance on his face, as he stalked toward Malloy. What the hell? Lamy's eyes nearly bugged out. The sight of C's explosive tags sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, his old, cloudy eyes snapped into focus. Is this kid insane? That many explosive tags could blow this whole damn village to kingdom come. Tutai swallowed hard. As the third Rakich's right-hand man, he was used to recklessness. But C's stunt made his blood run cold, wearing explosive tags as clothes. Seriously? Even Kirigakure's Onodan clan wouldn't dare pull something like that. This wasn't just reckless, it was flat-out lunacy. Outside the barrier, all three stopped fighting, staring in disbelief at the scene unfolding within. Setsuna's eyes widened, almost popping out of his head. Seeing CI rigged like a walking bomb, he was terrified that one wrong step would trigger the explosives, and just like that, this promising Uchiha genius from his faction would be gone. CI, what in the world are you doing? Setsuna yelled, sweat beading on his forehead, his heart pounding with dread. CI twisted the tag on his chest, turned his head, and replied calmly, Great Elder, you see how it is. It's the only way. Setsuna's Adam's apple bobbed. He forced himself to remain calm, trying to reason with him. See, stay calm. Get those tags off you right now. I'll get you out of there. Relax. These losers can't stop me. No, CI shook his head. walking toward Malloy with chilling resolve. Great Elder, we both know the score. If I give up and let that guy get out of the barrier, the three of them will team up and you won't stand a chance. If you die here, the clan back in Hell Valley will be overrun by the two-tailed Jinchuuriki. Uchiha will suffer a devastating blow. And it's not just about lives. CI took a breath, his voice serious. The Blood Pond clan gets liberated, the daimyo's commission from the land of lightning falls through. Our clan's reputation will be mud. Without that outside cash and the loss of the Hawk leader, there'll be chaos, infighting, and power grabs within Uchiha. And the outside world, old dogs like Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo, hate our guts. This is a time of crisis, a life-or-death moment for the clan. C's eyes flashed with intensity as he took a step forward, tugging the tag on his chest. I understand why I'm standing here. Malloy scrambled backward, panic etched on his face. What do you understand? Get away from me. What are you doing? Stop. Stay right there. Don't move. Don't pull it, it's gonna blow. It's gonna blow. Aya. Stay back. Stay back. Outside the barrier, hearing those words, Setsuna clenched his fist so hard his hand trembled. Of course he understood everything CI was saying, but he never expected CI to have such a clear vision. It was like looking in a mirror, seeing his own understanding reflected in someone so young. This, CI wasn't just a genius, he was a visionary. No wonder he'd volunteered for such a dangerous mission. He'd already seen the big picture. This young eagle, barely fledged, had jumped off the cliff's edge, not because he craved the thrill of flight, but because he saw the coming storm, the destruction of the nest. It was the fear of losing everything that drove this child, who should be enjoying his youth and honing his skills, to throw himself into the abyss. And that realization shattered Setsuna's heart. CI. His eyes burned, his face as cold as ever, but inside, he was deeply moved. Setsuna gripped his sword, his eyes slightly red, and his gaze became fiercely determined. He glared at the three-cloud ninja, his rage reaching a boiling point. He inhaled deeply and shouted, Uchiha CI. That's enough. Stop it, kid. Now. Uchiha doesn't need you to sacrifice yourself. CI smiled, his calm, indifferent expression softening. He turned his head, looked at Setsuna, shook his head, and said, Great Elder, don't try to talk me out of this. An eagle has to act like an eagle. This is my final farewell. CI smiled. After this, please don't forget me. Next year, burn some incense for me at the memorial. I'll be satisfied. Setsuna's heart skipped a beat. He raised his head, about to argue again, then he heard CI ask him quietly, Great Elder, you don't regret choosing me, do you? Setsuna's eyes clouded over. C's image was reflected in his Sharingan, blurring with the memory of that reckless kid who didn't know his own limits at the clan meeting. His face twisted with guilt, remembering how he'd almost rejected CI. He regretted it with every fiber of his being. If he'd known CI was such a rare talent, he'd never have allowed him on the battlefield. And he'd even considered using him as cannon fodder for the coup. Now, seeing CI willing to give his life to buy him a chance, Setsuna wanted to punch himself in the face. He deserved it. Setsuna trembled, staring at CI, his eyes filled with sorrow. CI. Please add it to your collection, recommend it, and read it. This is really important to new authors. Thanks to my adoptive father Shirmao for his monthly ticket. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Chapter 18 Blood and Tears, Madness and Promise. Uchiha's Anger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Perched atop a heap of ruins, Uchiha clenched his fists, a bone-chilling glint in his eyes as he glared at Malloy, Lamy, and Dodai, three ninja from Kumogakure. Never had he felt such agonizing pain. He, a great elder of the Uchiha clan, an eagle soaring freely through the sky. A handsome figure admired by the young eagles of the clan. But here, now, he could only watch as a young eagle, destined to break through the clouds and soar to unimaginable heights, was forced to carve a desperate escape route with its own flesh and blood. The three tomo in Uchiha's Sharingan spun wildly, almost merging into a solid, dark line, forming a new pattern, but that was all. Uchiha suddenly understood, with crushing clarity, that he wasn't gifted like Uchiha Kagami. He wasn't destined to awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, all he could do was stare with bloodshot eyes, the whites of which were a roadmap of crimson veins. His eyes burned red, like a demon's, a single tear of blood traced a path down his cheek. Uchiha closed his eyes for a moment, the darkness filling with ghostly images of those who had passed before him. Uchiha Taijima, Madara, Izuna, Kagami, one by one, figures, a wall of Uchiha, stood between him and Setsuna Uchiha, silent, numb, their scarlet eyes wide with unspoken accusations, their lips, teeth, even their faces trembled. They simply stared, filled with resentment, anger, and silent condemnation. Why, after all this time, from the Warring States period to now, had a mediocre waste like him survived? Uchiha snapped his eyes open, now resolute. His gaze, like lightning, swept over the three Kumogakure ninja, his Sharingan dripping with blood and tears. Then, he threw his head back and roared. Ha 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 ha. That it was laughter, but laced with a soul-deep agony that felt like fingernails being ripped off. Good. Good. Uchiha Ci. As the great elder of the Uchiha clan, leader of the Hawk faction, and your godfather, I acknowledge your will. Uchiha roared, his voice raw with anguish. Go to hell. Die here without a second thought. Within the barrier, Uchiha Ci's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but glance at Uchiha Setsuna, fearing the old man might get carried away and try some suicidal stunt. He'd gone this far. The old fool couldn't screw it up now. Damn it, run if you can't win. Isn't that obvious? But Uchiha instantly raised his long sword, pointing it at the Kumogakure ninja, his gaze as cold as a glacier. He promised, his voice ringing with conviction. Don't worry, I'll run like a scared dog. But these three, they will feel the full and eternal wrath of the Uchiha clan. From this moment on, I'll leverage the entire clan's power to strangle them. Wind, fire, earth, water, and lightning, every bounty board in the land of fire and the other major ninja villages will carry a permanent mission for their capture. Besides, the underground exchanges will always have a price on their heads. Every organization in the ninja world, big or small, Hidden Star, Hidden Waterfall, Hidden Grass, Hidden Rain, Hidden Tang, the Kunoichi, the Land of Iron, Ryuduin, Akatsuki, Shenyuan Clan, Mori, Lin, Prajna Clan, Kajiro. Every force and every organization. Everyone will know. Uchiha's eyes blazed, on the verge of bursting, his voice as cold and hard as shattered glass. Each of their heads is worth 100 million taels. Every word a promise etched in blood. What the hell are you talking about? Leimi trembled, panic etched on his face. Uchiha Setsuna, are you insane? You're breaking the unspoken rules of the ninja world. This is a death wish. Dodai and Malloy felt like they'd been hit by a sledgehammer, their minds reeling, crazy. They were all crazy. The kid was crazy. The old man was even crazier. Every family and village in the ninja world had endured unimaginable hatred and pain, but no one, publicly, dared to do what Setsuna Uchiha was doing. At most, they'd anonymously post a reward with an underground money exchange. The logic was simple: you kill my son, I put a bounty on your head. No big deal, but such actions would inevitably escalate conflicts, perpetuating the endless cycle of war and destroying villages. The ninja villages of various nations restricted such behavior. However, the Uchiha clan was different. As one of the two most powerful clans from the Warring States period, the Uchiha had the resources to bypass the ninja village mission system and submit this vendetta to various organizations. While no one had ever done it, the Uchiha had the connections to hack the system, of course. Although the bounty was 300 million on the surface, it might cost more than 1 billion secretly. This kind of cost also makes the organizations in the ninja world can only sigh and feel helpless and furious. Just to kill 3 people, the whole family's assets must be sold off, so that the whole family can tighten their belts and live, should the ninja clan continue to develop. However, Uchiha is different. Uchiha is rich, very rich. Such consumption will not harm the fundamentals. Moreover, the Hawks in the Uchiha clan are a bunch of lunatics, and they are probably very happy to donate money from their own pockets to pay for such bounties." Hearing Lami's words, Uchiha grinned, his eyes icy and arrogant, full of contempt. "Rules? You think I give a damn about rules? Did you mistake me for someone who does? I'm Uchiha Setsuna." The faces of Lami, Dodai, and Malloy paled. Right, this old guy was Uchiha Setsuna. A name known to every senior ninja around the world, the one who dared to launch a coup while the second Hokage was out negotiating, the one who planned to assassinate the second Hokage. He was just as bad as Yunin's golden and silver horns. And all this while the current patriarch, Uchiha Kagami, was still alive. He was completely insane. It wasn't surprising that such a person would do anything in the heat of the moment. The only difference between this old guy and Yunin's golden and silver horns was, one assassination succeeded. The other was an attempted assassination, and the coup was thwarted, a complete terrorist. "What the hell, you're just a madman, madman, madman." Dodai cursed, his voice laced with fear. Lami pointed a trembling finger at Uchiha Setsuna, speechless with rage. Malloy looked defeated, almost resigned. Who could understand what he was feeling? Standing before him was a lunatic who wore explosive tags like clothes. Behind him stood an old madman threatening to chop off his head and use it as a chamber pot. He was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Even Uchiha Ci felt a lump in his throat. Looking at Uchiha Setsuna, his skin crawled. He suddenly realized he didn't want to die here. If he died here, replaced by the great elder Setsuna Uchiha, Uchiha would probably be destroyed faster than in the original timeline. Uchiha Ci internally wailed, "Help! Are all these Uchiha people insane?" After finally getting rid of an Uchiha Shursui, why did he have to encounter an Uchiha Setsuna who was even more deranged? Chapter 19 Fight to the Death. Billions of anger will trouble Liunu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Uchiha Setsuna's almost suicidal speech, the situation was stark. The Uni ninjas were shaking in their boots, practically waiting for the Reaper. Meanwhile, the Uchiha guys were like a poorly rehearsed comedy act. It was like, Uchiha's Got Talent, where anyone with a death wish can audition. Uchiha Ci realized he'd maybe laid it on a little thick. He'd really gotten under Setsuna Uchiha's skin. But all he wanted was a semi-happy ending and a ticket back home, which meant deceiving everyone. He'd started with the idea that Kumogakure would destroy Hell Valley's defenses with the two-tailed Jinchuuriki, which would be a huge blow to the Uchiha, except that was bogus, because Uchiha wouldn't need to guard Hell Valley in Yuno country for much longer. The Blood Pond clans and Kumogakure's plan had been dead in the water since the Land of Thunder's daimyo envoy had bought the farm. The woman who went to plead with the daimyo, offered up as tribute, was the wife of Blood Pond's Oya. Castle Lord. After she'd returned to Hell Valley, she'd offed herself, unable to handle the clan's abuse and the pressure of being dragged into the war, leaving behind her daughter, Chino Chino of the Blood Pool Oya Castle, or rather Oya Castle Flame. When the guy heard his wife had killed herself, he just lost it. He blamed everyone in the Blood Pond clan who'd driven her to it. His blood dragon eye probably leveled up to something like Mangekyo Sharingan, and like the Mangekyo, it came at a price. He'd gone completely batshit. But he could also fly a Gundam, in an era where fighting was still pretty old school. He was going to slaughter his entire clan, take his daughter, and build Oya Castle on some island in the Land of Water, become the ninja world's top black marketeer, the guy behind the arena, and the kingpin of bloodline trafficking. Ci figured this con would save 2 lives, with only him taking the fall. For him, it was the best case scenario. The great elder Uchiha whirled around, his eyes full of sadness and regret, but with an unsettling kindness. Ci, go to hell. As long as I'm around, this vendetta will never end. Not even Sarutobi Hiruzen can stop me. Ci thought, chill out, great elder. At this rate, the Hawks are going to end up as roadkill. But looking around, seeing how things had spiraled, with even Setsuna Uchiha planning his wake, it felt almost rude not to die. So, Ci locked eyes with Uchiha Setsuna, his voice firm. Then my death won't be in vain. The 3 Kumogakure ninjas went wide-eyed, staring at him. He'd been hit by the thunderbolt, barely able to twitch, pretending to pull the trigger. His fingers were so numb he couldn't even budge the detonating tag. but he'd adjusted to the shock, and his fingers were starting to work again. He decided to rip it open. No way, he's really going to do it. Chutai, get clear. Lamy watched Ci grab the tag, gritting his teeth and turning to Malloy in the barrier. Malloy, use it. You have to survive. Or the mission's blown. What? Malloy asked, eyes wide with hesitation. But the Sandaime said that's for the Blood Pond clan. Even if you die, you can't use it before then. Lamy clenched his fists, torn. He didn't have much time. His eyes darted between the two Uchiha, then hardened. Who the hell thought we'd run into these two psychos? If we don't use it now, we're dead meat. The mission fails, and then that Uchiha lunatic puts a bounty on our heads. Think about it, this damn mission's going to cost you your life. Use it, and we can gang up on Setsuna Uchiha. He won't get the chance to call for our heads. Otherwise, just give up. Lamy's beard twitched. As a ninja who'd seen it all since the Warring States period, he knew how serious Setsuna Uchiha was. When the old coot said he was going to get you, he meant it. Lamy's voice was urgent. The Uchiha are mobilizing. If we don't get out of the land of you, we'll be surrounded. The mission fails, and we're dead. Think it through. 100 million tails, one head. Even if we make it back to the land of thunder, assassins will come after us. In the barrier, Malloy's eyes darted back and forth as he slumped to the ground. He gritted his teeth and glared at Uchiha Ci. Uchiha Ci, huh? Okay. I'll remember you. But don't think you've won. Ci raised an eyebrow, thinking, is this a turn-based RPG now? That he just stared coldly, unfazed. Malloy gritted his teeth. Ci was wearing a detonating tag. Anywhere he attacked, he'd explode, but if they didn't kill him, he'd blow them up. Generally, sealing jutsu users fought in one of two ways. The first was with sealing seals, made on the spot, using sealing scrolls, like the fire sealing and lightning bindings he'd used earlier. The other was creating a full-blown sealing array. Which took time, complicated hand seals, and drawing runes. Too slow for this situation. To quickly create a magic circle on the battlefield, you needed a sealing scroll with a pre-drawn circle, like the binding circle from before. But now, Malloy watched Ci get closer, pulling harder on the tag. His eyes almost popped, pupils shrinking to pinpricks. The fear of death slammed into him. Malloy trembled, his mind racing. Finally, he steeled himself, pulled a sealing scroll from his pouch. Ci watched his every move, ready for anything. He ignored the tingling in his arm, and ripped the tag. Ripped. A flash of light. At the same time, Malloy tore open the scroll, unfurled it. He plunged his hand into his own wound, ignoring the pain, and drew a thick glob of blood. Malloy glared, slammed his bloody hand onto the scroll, and screamed at Ci. I'm not losing to some scrub genin. Eat this. Sealing jutsu, a billion grievances burden the slaves. Chapter 20 The World of 3 Seconds, Homeless Wild Dogs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Uchiha Ci ripped open the first detonating tag, every symbol etched on his body blazed with an intense yellow light. In that instant, Uchiha Ci became light, pure, physical light, brighter than the sunrise itself. The sheer intensity blinded him, making him feel like he was wielding a holy lightsaber instead of a detonating tag. For a moment, it felt like he was about to transform into a Gundam and unleash hell, but that was just a pipe dream. Uchiha Ci hadn't even awakened his Sharingan. He figured a guy who woke up at 6 every morning, crashed at 10 every night, and needed his daily fix of soda before bed. A guy whose life was as predictable as his alarm clock, ticking along like clockwork, wasn't exactly prime Sharingan material. That kind of thing was for lunatics. Shaking his head, Uchiha Ci grinned, baring his teeth. Ha 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 ha. So long, Uchiha. Goodbye to this messed up world. That he threw back his head, his face a mask of manic glee, and flung his arms wide, embracing the flames. He was going to meet his end like a goddamn winner. The heat intensified, the flames licked at him, barring any surprises. Uchiha Ci was about to explode into a spectacular firework display in 3 seconds, marking the end of his story in the ninja world. Then, with a cool $500 million insurance payout, he'd be on his way home, laughing all the way. This was The ultimate power move, a detonating tag baptism, a direct flight to the crematorium, skipping all the boring stuff. With cremation this fast, how could he possibly lose? Seriously, tell him. How the hell was he supposed to lose? Akimbo loudly bb.jpg, however, Uchiha CI, lost in his awesome fantasy, had forgotten one small detail. Right before leaving, he'd smashed his alarm clock to smithereens, then he dropped himself smack dab in the middle of the Third Ninja War, the most chaotic battlefield in the world. And besides, was a guy who preferred soda to herbal tea really that stable in the first place? Sealing technique, billions of wrathful slaves, a sealing technique unique to Kumogakure. Arguably one of the most powerful sealing techniques in the ninja world, second only to the Uzumaki clans. The problem? The cost. It required ink from the eight-tailed ox head, and the only person who could reliably produce that ink was the third Raikage, who, with his strongest spear and strongest shield, regularly beat the crap out of the Eight Tails. How powerful was it? During the Fourth Ninja War, the Eight Tails and Kurabi used it to seal nearly 1,000 enemies at once. The ink would morph into a clone of the Eight Tails Jinchuuriki, using a unique taijutsu to immobilize the target. After 3 seconds, the target would be completely consumed by the ink, sealing them away. But it had one huge drawback: it took a full 3 seconds to activate after making contact. Coincidentally, detonating tags were designed with a 3-second fuse, even when not manually triggered. Talk about timing. Now, at the edge of the barrier surrounding the ruins, Malloy, his hands slick with blood, his eyes like chips of ice, roared. Sealing technique, billions of wrathful slaves. The character for 8 on the blood-stained scroll blazed with light, a torrent of ink erupted, like a waterfall of darkness. From within the ink, a massive figure began to materialize, wreathed in black and red-tailed beast chakra. It cocked its head, its emotionless white eyes locked onto Uchiha CI. The next moment, the Jinchuuriki phantom surged forward on the ink fall, then, a devastating wrestling hold. He clamped his elbow around Uchiha C's neck, swept his leg, and sent him tumbling. Then he locked Uchiha C's arm and pinned his waist. Better than any championship submission. Uchiha CI, mid-laugh, was suddenly tackled by a tailed beast-cloaked behemoth, who used a series of grappling moves to slam him onto his back. And just like that, his pretty face was wiped clean. The next moment, Uchiha C's vision went black, the macho man dissolved into a puddle of ink. Uchiha blinked, looking like Patrick Star after getting a face full of Squidward's lemon juice. He saw the ink spreading rapidly across his body, and as it spread, the bright yellow light about to erupt from the detonating tags flickered and died, leaving him with nothing but useless paper. Nearly 80% of the tags were neutralized, and the remaining 20% slowly fizzled out. The grin on Uchiha C's face froze. Meanwhile, Malloy, who had just unleashed the sealing technique, mirrored Uchiha C's expression. He was utterly speechless, staring at the sealing scroll in disbelief. He started questioning everything. Before leaving, the third Raikage had solemnly warned him that this technique was only to be used when the Blood Pond clan defied orders and tried to escape Hell Valley as a whole clan. He emphasized that it must only be used when the entire clan was in open revolt. And this was it? He was supposed to subdue the Blood Pond clan with this. Aside from summoning a seemingly powerful Jinchuuriki shadow, all it did was put some punk in a wrestling hold. Where was the power? Where was the effect? Was there a customer service line for returns? Malloy wanted to scream, but then, .8 kunai whizzed through the air, grazing Malloy's cheek and embedding themselves in the barrier wall behind him, followed by a shriek that sounded like a hungry ghoul. What the hell have you done? The tone was dripping with so much hate and rage that it could be compared to that of a hellhound that just had 2 of its 3 heads chopped off and was now roaming aimlessly in the wilderness. The sound originated from Uchiha CI, who scrambled to his feet, his face smeared with squid juice, his features contorted into a horrifying mess. A pair of scarlet eyes blazed to life. Each eye contained a single, furiously spinning magatama. Uchiha CI, covered in ink, face twisted in fury, roared in a voice cracking with rage. What have you done? I'm asking you. What have you done? Answer me. What have you done? Talk to me. What the hell did you do? Uchiha CI, head thrown back, eyes wide, teeth bared, trembled with fury, his bloodshot eyes, his tear-streaked cheeks, that he looked like a rabid beast, ready to tear flesh. The hatred, the madness, the sheer bloodlust in his eyes was almost palpable. Unfortunately, 0.3 seconds later, Uchiha sees, still, couldn't say goodbye to this world. The setup is complete, the foreshadowing has paid off. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next up is the Bats Hit Crazy part everyone loves. If you've got tickets and collections, don't be shy.